Mario Cristobal has completely changed the DNA of the Miami Hurricanes football program, and that is the biggest thing that we learned on Saturday.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, if there is such a thing. And yeah, there is. When you're coming off of your historic first ever college football playoff win, when you went in to Kyle Field to face Texas A&M and the mighty SEC, and you beat them up on the line of scrimmage, and you set up in the next round a historic grudge match, 23 years in the making, revenge against the Ohio State Buckeyes. Yeah, it's a happy Monday. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes Radio Network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube. We're part of the #1 Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. On this loaded episode, we're going to take a look ahead at the matchups against Ohio State. Spoiler alert, Buckeyes are a really, really good football team. They're the defending national champs. It's going to take everything for Miami to beat these guys, including it's going to take more prolific plays on offense, right? There were a number of reasons why Saturday's game at Kyle Field was a defensive struggle. Completely different ball game coming up, and Miami's going to have to do more through the air, and you're going to have to score more than 10 points to beat Ohio State. We'll talk about the offense bouncing back, but let's talk about what we learned about not only this specific 2025 Miami Hurricanes football team that's now one of the 8 last teams standing for the national championship, but what we've learned now about the culture of Miami Hurricanes football. I mean, Miami now, and of course, it starts at the top for me. Like, you credit Mario Cristobal, but you also have to credit his staff that he hired, the players that he has recruited, and how they've been developed by that staff. But Miami, as we saw on Saturday, they've got a completely different DNA from what they had for the better part of the last 20 years, right? This particular team was mentally tough enough to bounce back after the SMU loss. That thing could have easily spiraled after that. Now they've won 5 straight games, are peaking at the best possible time and playing their best possible football as we go deeper into the CFP. You learned a guy like Malachi Toney. I think he's a perfect example of a player who's built from the right stuff. Malachi had a terrible moment on Miami's second to last offensive possession. A costly fumble that had your defense not picked it up, would have been a lot more costly than it was. But after that costly fumble, the next drive is Miami's final offensive drive, and Toney completely redeems himself, scoring the game-winning touchdown. That's how you bounce back. And by the way, you want to talk about guys being built from the right stuff? How about Mark Fletcher, who was the first one, his former high school teammate, first one to console Malachi Toney and really keep him positive as Toney was able to finish the game strong. And we all know Mark Fletcher finished the game strong. We'll talk about him. Another thing on the DNA, right? It's not just the mentality, it's the physicality that comes with that. You had Miami Hurricanes players literally putting their bodies on the line for victory. Mohamed Toure, Miami linebacker, breaking up that pass with a violent hit on the second to last offensive play for Texas A&M. That was nothing short of heroic, right? I mean, he rung the player's bell, but also rung his own bell on that play. How about Bobby Pruitt, that special teams tackle on Casey Concepcion? That was violent. That was perfectly timed. We also saw Jacoby Thomas at safety, Zechariah Poyser at safety, Ahmad Moten on the defensive line. All these guys got banged up while playing their hearts out. Miami left everything on the field on Saturday, and they played like there was no tomorrow. And, hopefully the 11 days between games are going to be enough for those bodies to mend and get ready for Ohio State. It's like you've got the disadvantage of having to play an opening round game, but then maybe it's also an advantage because by the time Ohio State takes the field again, you're talking about a month, like literally 31, 32 days since the last time. They played their conference championship game. So I guess it's about the same actually, because Miami had the bye week for the conference championship, but you're talking about over 3 weeks between games for Ohio State, where at least Miami was able to play in that opening round game and hopefully carry some of that momentum into the next one, right? Keontae Scott, you talk about toughness right there. Absolutely rocked his recovery, from late in the regular season. He had a toe injury. He came back. A lot of us thought he had probably already played his final game in a Miami uniform, but he was able to rock his rehab, and he played as well on Saturday as he played all season, right? Two sacks, forced a fumble in the game. Tremendous. We learned as well that Miami's defensive line is as good as advertised, if not better, because I had heard plenty of chatter leading into that A&M game that, well, Miami's defensive line, are they really that good? Because they feasted on ACC opponents. Texas A&M played an SEC schedule. Never mind the fact that Texas A&M avoided all the good teams in the SEC outside of Texas, who they lost to, but they had the easiest end of the SEC schedule. Miami's defensive line isn't battle tested enough. Well, they actually had their best pass rushing performance against A&M here in the playoffs, right? 7 sacks against an offensive line of A&M that had only given up 12 in their previous 12 games. Miami gets 7 sacks in one game. Rueben Bain had a 3-sack performance, all that after he got talked down in the buildup by Texas A&M offensive lineman Trey Zune. And on that note, here's something Texas A&M learned, and hopefully, I hope other teams don't learn from this, but Texas A&M learned that giving Rueben "Hurricane" Bain extra motivation, bulletin board material, is a really bad idea. Why? Why do it? Why give Rueben anything extra to think about? So you already knew on the flip side that Miami's offensive line is really good, if not elite. But I think they reminded everyone in this game. Miami defensively had 7 sacks. Offensively, they only gave up 2. They kept a clean pocket for Carson Beck on over 79% of his dropbacks. And by the way, 0 of the 2 Texas A&M sacks came from Cassius Howell, the guy who had 11.5 sacks in the regular season. Miami was able to keep him so quiet, I forgot he even played. Last week, we were talking about Cassius Howell, 11.5 sacks. How are you going to block this guy? Howell had such a quiet game, I forgot he was even on the field, right? And Miami's offensive line, not only did they do a really good job protecting Carson Beck, they also paved the way for a 172-yard rusher in Mark Fletcher. By the way, you talk about having your best game at the best possible time. Mark Fletcher had a career game. Fletch had never broken off a run of over 50 yards before, gets a 56-yarder on the most important drive. And on that final drive, Shannon Dawson, Miami's offensive coordinator, he told Mark Fletcher, Mark, we're going to put the ball in your hands and you're going to drive us down the field. Fletcher relayed that message to his offensive line, and then we all saw how that game ended with Fletch absolutely taking over. That dude is a stud Miami Hurricane, and it's going to be a cool storyline. We know this matchup coming up against Ohio State. Not only do you have the, O2 Fiesta Bowl factor, every Miami fan thinks about that. None of us have forgotten about that. You also have all these players that were recruited by both programs. I mean, everyone knows the Jeremiah Smith story for Ohio State, him choosing the Buckeyes over the hometown Hurricanes. But then you also have Mark Fletcher, who was committed to OSU for 8 months, ultimately chose the hometown Canes over the Buckeyes. Justin Scott on Miami's D-line, who's been playing really well, he was committed to Ohio State. He flipped to Miami. Marquise Lightfoot was recruited heavily by Ohio State. He flipped to Miami. Jordan Lyle was committed to Ohio State. He flipped to Miami. So that factor is big. And then another thing that we learned, and I'm going to give Mario Cristobal a lot of credit on this episode, we learned that he can, in fact, win big games. I can't tell you folks how many times, and a lot of folks were, last couple weeks requesting, can I come on your Texas A&M show and your podcast to talk about the game, did a couple of national radio appearances, and I kept getting the same question. Everybody asked me, hey, Do you trust Mario Cristobal in a game like this? Is Mario going to find a way to blow this game? Well, he's changing his narratives in real time, right? Mario Cristobal just picked up the biggest win that Miami has picked up in over 20 years, and he does that as head coach of his alma mater. And by the way, Miami took a knee to win the game, just throwing that out there. So those are the things that we learned Saturday against Texas A&M, and we'll talk about what it's going to take to beat the Buckeyes when we come back, because you've got a massive challenge in front of you. You want to keep it locked right here, folks. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Oh, and folks, we are only getting started with FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything's different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting, because you're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Folks, live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, the momentum tips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump right into that moment. Guys, their live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. It's so cool to watch it. Player props update as guys heat up, and you can bet things like next touchdown scorers, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, but so can you. Guys, thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. And folks, thank you so much for making Locked On the #1 podcast network in the world. And if you haven't already, go check out the new Everydayer Club. The all access tier is great. Folks, on the Everydayer Club, I am giving you guys virtually every single day an exclusive episode called the Canes Colada, where I talk about what's on my mind every morning. We take you a little behind the scenes on Locked On Canes as well. It's really cool. We send out an exclusive newsletter to the all access members and so many more features. So check it out. LockedOnCanes.supercast.com. That's LockedOnCanes.supercast.com. We also put the link in the show notes below. Got some cool questions, by the way, from Everydayer Club members want to address on this episode. I saw this come up a little bit on social media. Chris asks, hey, Miami nearly gave up a game-tying touchdown, at the end. He says, should Malachi Toney have slid at the 1-yard line instead of scoring a touchdown with just under 2 minutes left? I think it was like a minute 44 on the clock, something like that, when Malachi scored the last touchdown. For the analytics folks are like, hey, you should have tried to run it down to the last possible second, maybe kick a game-winning field goal of 18, 19 yards. I strongly disagree, because context matters and the way the game had gone to that point matters. And by the way, Shannon Dawson said after the game, he told his guys, if you have the chance to get into the end zone, take it. Like, dude, don't be thinking about, sliding at the 1 and running the clock out. Because first of all, folks, to that point in the game, touchdowns were literally impossible to come by. Nobody had scored a touchdown yet, which means both defenses were hot. And Miami had to trust their defense. I know it almost didn't work out because A&M got all the way to Miami's 5 before you had the big hit by Mo Toure and then the interception by Bryce Fitzgerald to secure the win. But why not trust your defense, especially when you were giving the football to A&M with under 2 minutes and 0 timeouts, and they had to score a touchdown because you scored a touchdown. And that's the other thing, right? If you had, maybe taken a few seconds to kick the field goal, if you would have given A&M any time to get into field goal range. And then the other thing, you talk about potentially kicking a game-winning field goal. No disrespect to Carter Davis. I think he can bounce back hopefully next week. But why would you trust your kicker? Why would you trust your kicker in that game to kick a game-winning field goal when he was 1 for 4 on the day to that point? Can you imagine how much folks, Miami fans and otherwise, would have been ripping Mario Cristobal if they had told Malachi Toney to slide at the 1, Miami had played for a game-winning field goal, and then you shanked it or you get it blocked and, you don't take a lead for that reason? Can you imagine how much coaching would have been slammed? So listen, I get it that there are certain points the analytics folks would say, hey, you slide at the 1, you try to run the clock out. Number one, you can't trust your kicker based on the way that the game had gone. And number two, you're talking about your defense had kept the opponent out of the end zone all game long, and they had 0 timeouts in under 2 minutes. I can understand why you would take your touchdown there and you would trust your defense to close it out. And I know it was a little dicey, but ultimately they did close it out. So no, I do not think Toney should have slid at the 1. And if you disagree with me on that, let me know in the comments. But folks, it worked out. Bryce Fitzgerald came up with a clutch interception to seal the game. So I disagree that Miami should have played that differently. And Shannon Dawson told him, if you have a chance to score, you score. Andrew from PA wants to know, hey, how do we get our offense going? Ohio State will be just as big of a challenge. Now, Andrew, the statistics will say that Ohio State will be an even bigger challenge. The Buckeyes have the number 1 total defense in the country. That's fewest yards allowed. They give up just 213.5 yards per game. Number 1 passing defense in the country. They give up just 130 passing yards per game. Number 6 in rushing defense. They're actually 1 spot ahead of Miami in rushing D. They give up just 84.5 rushing yards per game. They have the top scoring defense in the country. They give up just over 8 points per game. But as far as Miami's offense, I am expecting a bounce back for a simple reason. This game is going to look different because it's indoors. You're not going to have the swirling winds. I mean, the winds really affected at A&M the downfield passing game. You notice for either quarterback, there was only one explosive passing play hit all game, and that was Marcel Reed to Mario Craver. Like, there was one downfield pass hit all game. Everything else was short stuff or incompletion. So the wind was a huge factor. This game's going to be inside Jerry's world. There will not be any wind. And obviously the wind affected the kicking game, right? I mean, Miami effectively had 9 points, makeable field goals. 9 points were left off the board because the winds were so difficult for Carter Davis. So Carson Beck, we can agree, has got to be more prolific in finding success downfield in this game. He needs to find the likes of Keelan Marion, CJ Daniels down the field, Malachi Toney, of course, but assuming Ohio State is going to pay extra attention to Malachi Toney, because everybody is going to have to do that, the extra attention on Toney is going to hopefully open things up for the other guys, and Beck is going to have to find his playmakers. And I also think that this upcoming game, there could be more of a Gerard Pringle factor with his speed, because, this previous game against A&M was more vulnerable up the gut to Mark Fletcher. And Fletcher, obviously, hell of a player. He's going to have to be a factor against Ohio State as well. But I think Gerard Pringle might be able to become more of a factor in this upcoming game. So, yeah, I mean, I think the elements or lack thereof is going to allow Miami to do a little bit more offensively than they did last game. But they're also going to have to, right? They're going to have to do more, and they're going to have to score more than 10 points to win. Get a question, 2 questions from Jeff. He says, first, how's your trip going? And second, is there any update on Ahmad Moten? He says, enjoy your Christmas in Italy and Austria with the family. The trip is going great. We're celebrating a number of different milestones in my family. And my father's favorite place in the world is Seefeld, Austria, which is where we are right now. It's beautiful. Taking my son skiing today. So wish us luck, and hopefully nobody breaks anything out there. I don't want to come up on the injury report for next week. We're having a tremendous trip. As far as Ahmad Moten and the other injuries, it's too early here. Mario Cristobal is going to speak this afternoon, Monday afternoon. So we'll see. I'm assuming he'll have some updates and some clarity, but also, 9 days before the game, it's a little hard to expect anything too substantive. So you think about, Ahmad Moten, other guys who got nicked up or banged up, Zechariah Poyser, Jacoby Thomas, Mo Toure, who I think is okay because he was celebrating with his teammates after Miami won the game. So it didn't look like he was woozy or anything, but hopefully we'll get some updates from Mario, but it's a little too soon. And the official injury reports are not going to come out until a couple days before the game next week. We get this one from Dan, who says, hey, Carson Beck did not have his best game, but didn't lose. It's what Jimmy Johnson wanted from his quarterbacks. Do you agree? And again, I think that in the context of that particular game, I thought Carson Beck did what he had to do. Taking care of the football, playing just well enough to win. Those are the most important things. Saturday, as we mentioned, was a windy game. It made downfield passing very difficult. You also went up against a great defense. They were really prepared for Malachi Toney and a tough road environment. That game was built for ground and pound, and that's ultimately how Miami won. And I'll say this about Carson Beck, and I can agree. I thought he played well enough to win. And the most important thing, 0 turnovers from Carson. While his counterpart, Marcel Reed, Reed, threw for more yards than Beck did. His team couldn't run the football. Miami could. And Marcel Reed had 3 turnovers, 2 interceptions, and he lost a fumble. That was the biggest difference in this game. Carson Beck, 0 turnovers. Marcel Reed had 3. We'll get into some Ohio State, a little bit more of that when we come back. Again, we mentioned tremendous defense. Here's what it's going to take for Miami to win. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. It's a Victory Monday, and it's a moving on in the playoff type of Monday. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Guys, and if you want tickets to the Cotton Bowl, Miami against Ohio State, you know where to go. Game Time. There's nothing like college football season. Tailgates, packed stadiums, being right there in the middle of it. The energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever. But actually getting tickets, that part used to be frustrating with long queues, logins, and prices jumping at checkout. But that's why Game Time gives the advantage back to us, the fans. It is the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. Folks, I love being able to see the exact view from my seat right there in the app before buying. You know exactly what you're going to be looking at. The zone deals stand out. You pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save even more money. And guys, knowing that the prices you get on Game Time include all of the fees up front, that makes the whole process stress-free. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. And shout out to the Everydayers. Again, if you want to join the Everydayer Club, the all-access tier, click the link in the show notes below or go to lockedoncanes.supercast.com. We'd love to have you on that all-access platform. All right, we get this is more of a comment from Hercules, who says, hey, the outstanding coaching by Mario Cristobal and Coach Heatherman, the time management with Mario, that defense giving up just 3 on the road in the CFP, trenches, defense, and the running game traveling in the playoffs like Mario said it would. Said, I'm basically saying big props to Mario Cristobal and the crew from Hercu. And, I'll say another thing. And I know you're going to think I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, but honestly, think about it. I know Shannon Dawson was getting some criticism from Miami fans for a lot of the cute stuff, right? Like he ran probably 3 or 4 trick type of plays, Mally Cat packages, throwbacks, double passes, like none of the tricky stuff worked in this game. And people were like, why are you getting too cute? You have to understand the 4D chess aspect of it, that, and also if just one of those plays had worked, he would have looked pretty smart for that. So when you run that cute stuff and it makes Ohio State, I'm already on to the next one. You make Texas A&M's defense think that something crazy could come at any time. That also softens them up to be vulnerable to the power running game. So I'm willing to believe that part of the reason why Miami was able to really gash them in the fourth quarter was because you spread their defense out through the first 3. So even though the trick plays didn't work, I think there was a place for them. Now, maybe did he get a little too cute at times? I was critical when I was watching the game. I'm like, what are we doing? But there's also the factor of giving the defense more things to think about, that something could be coming from anywhere. I think it does affect how vulnerable they are down the stretch, which is something to think about. But certainly, Corey Heatherman, was the MVP of the coaching staff in that game, no doubt. We get this one. Good question. Give us 2 key matchups to watch for Miami against Ohio State. Easiest 2 for me. Number 1, Miami's defensive backs against Jeremiah Smith. It's going to be a combination. I don't think it's going to be one guy shadowing him all game, but it's going to be a tough assignment for a combination of Xavier Lucas and OJ Frederic. And you probably also need to bracket Jeremiah Smith with help. So this is going to be an all hands on deck approach. But Miami's DBs against Jeremiah Smith, huge matchup. We start with that one. And then, of course, Rueben Bain and Akeem Mesidor against Ohio State's offensive line. Now, Miami, they just went up against a really good offensive line and made them look bad. They're going to try to do that 2 games in a row because Ohio State has only given up 11 sacks all season long. Same total as Miami, 11 sacks given up, right? But Bain and Mesidor playing their best football, and I hope somebody on Ohio State is stupid enough to give Bain some bulletin board material. And that leads us to a question from Martin, who says, hey, do you think OSU is going to talk some trash to Bain in the media? I feel like Ohio State is too smart for that because this is a team that they've been there before. They just won a national championship. Like Texas A&M was very foolish. Like they downplayed Miami. Ruben Owens, their running back, was like, no, I'm not worried about their rushing defense because we ran for over 200 yards against Mizzou. Guess what? Miami held you bums to 89. 89 rushing yards. Ruben Owens, you shouldn't have run your mouth. Then, of course, Trey Zune the third. Yeah, I don't think Rueben Bain's going to be a threat. Now, we're going to handle him. He didn't handle nothing. You got handled. In fact, Trey Zune, I don't know if Trey Zune deleted all of his social medias. Rueben Bain, we were talking with Brad Tejeda yesterday, and Brad said it. Trey Zune is never going to be able to order a Reuben sandwich again, is how much Rueben Bain traumatized him in Saturday's game. So, man, I hope I'm giving the Buckeyes too much credit, but I feel like Ohio State is too smart to give Ruben any bulletin board material, but I hope I'm wrong about that one, Martin. And we get a question from the 305 who says, hey, do you think Adidas might have a special jersey lined up for the Ohio State game, maybe a throwback to that 2002 jersey? I probably know less about jerseys than I hope Miami wears the Stormtrooper look again. I'm assuming because Ohio State is the higher seed that they're going to consider OSU to be the home team. So if Miami is considered to be the road team, neutral site, obviously, but if Miami is considered the road team, I would like to go Stormtrooper again. Miami is undefeated in the Stormtrooper unis. That's what they wore last week. And also, are you really saying you want to have a throwback to the 0-2 look? I don't want to wear the jerseys that we, lost in that game. I want to do something different. I feel like if we wear the 0-2 throwbacks, they're going to throw back and have Terry Porter referee that game. We don't want that. So I want to move forward, not look backward in this case. Maybe if we were playing Nebraska again, I would want to honor the 0-1 national championship team, but I don't want anything 0-2 unless if players from the 0-2 team like Andre Johnson, if he wants to come to the game as he was at the Texas A&M game, I'm fine with that. And folks, that's something Miami had 3 Hall of Famers on the sideline in that Texas A&M game. Andre was there. Playmaker Michael Irvin was there. Edgerrin James was there cheering on Miami. I noticed that their Texas A&M fans, like they were noticing that and they were envious. Now, obviously the Aggies, they don't have an alumni list like Miami has. I mean, Miami is among the most blessed in the entire country with just the sheer quality and caliber of Hall of Famers and great NFLers that we can offer on our sidelines. But like Texas A&M fans were like, man, like why can't we get more of our alumni out to games and on the sidelines? Because Irvin, Andre, Edge, like they were firing the Miami fans up and the Miami players. I mean, a guy like Michael Irvin was able to console Malachi Toney after the fumble. Like Miami is so unique with the way that the alumni are so active and involved in our program. And I'm very thankful for it. And I'm thankful for you guys for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Smash that like button, subscribe to Locked On Canes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you check out the Everydayer Club, link in the show notes below, or lockedoncanes.supercast.com. And we'll talk to you next time on a Truth Teller Tuesday tomorrow, right here on Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.